Oh, well. Okay, now we are going to move on to the SPLC hit piece, where he writes, SPLC published a hit piece today doxing both of my parents and doxing a family property that belonged to my deceased grandmother, which is actually not true, as we'll see shortly. What is the public interest in publishing this information? Jason Wilson and Jeff Tischauscher are attacking my family because of my political activism and setting me up to be harassed or killed, which Nick himself has engaged in personally. Okay, he has instructed others to engage in this kind of behavior on his behalf. He has engaged in it personally. He doxed my parents just a few months ago, had no qualms doing that. I would ask the same question to Nick Fuentes. What interest to the public is my parents' identity? Of course, there is none. He just wanted to dox me. He wanted to harass me. The harassment is ongoing. The doxing is ongoing. And I'm sure, more than anything, he is hoping to threaten my personal safety. So the idea that there's any difference or distinction between Nick and the SPLC, the tactics that they employ, there are none. There are none. The only difference is that the SPLC, they have, presumably they have more financial backing. They have presumably more influence. But that's it. That's it. Of course, if Nick were in a position where he could wield the same amount of power, influence that the SPLC does, there is no doubt at all that he wouldn't hesitate to do exactly what they're currently doing to him. I mean, we already know that he's done that. He's done that to me. He's done that to many, many others. There's no reason to name the names or bring attention to it. But if you guys have been following the stream, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. So it's very, very hard for me to feel any sympathy for him in this case, because the guy is a total scumbag, and as far as I'm concerned, is getting precisely what he deserves. They say what goes around comes around. So payback's a bitch. Fuck you. And yeah, you don't like it when it happens to you, right? But that's what he did. That is what he did. And he'll do it again. It's not like those days are done. It's something that is active. It's ongoing. I mean, this is who he is. This is who the Groypers are. Bunch of losers. Bunch of losers. Lowlives. Scumbags. So, yeah, I don't feel bad at all. And I think we're actually going to take a look at the article for ourselves. But before we do, one more post from Woe Is Me Fuentes. He writes, SPLC is a legacy organization with a $500 million endowment. Wah, wah, wah. Once again, this guy would take money from anybody if it was offered to him. This guy would work with anybody as long as he stood something to gain from whoever they are. We've seen that. Time and time again, we have seen that Nick Fuentes has absolutely no morals to speak of. So, the idea that there's a difference between him and the SPLC is completely and totally fallacious. And, this will be red meat for the Groypers. He's always trying to frame himself like the ultimate victim. And he, of course, is in no way responsible for any of the the punishment that has been inflicted upon him, right? Now, don't get me wrong. Obviously, I'm aware of the persecution obviously, I know about all of that. But Nick has certainly not done himself any favors and is unmitigated scum. Even to people that are presumably allies of the movement. If anything, he's actually been more vicious to allies of the movement than people that were opposed to. I think you could easily make that case. So, yeah, I don't have even an ounce of sympathy for Nick in this situation. I think it's great when this happens to him, because I think that it's justice, it's retribution, it's payback. And yeah, when this is how you treat people, well, when it happens back to you, am I supposed to care? I don't at all. So anyway, here it is from the Southern Poverty Law Center. Nick Fuentes trades parents' basement for privacy, live streaming dead. Now, I'll be honest, this is not really the most scathing hit piece of all time. A lot of this is known information to us. So it's not, this is not like a devastating takedown of Nick. And the left is not capable of devastatingly taking down our guys because like they don't know what the Achilles heel is. They think that if they are able to demonstrate his racism or his anti-Semitism, then I guess that will somehow lead to his downfall. But there's some nuggets of interest in here. For the most part, I would say it's kind of whatever, but I'll share it with you guys anyway. A Hate Watch investigation has revealed that white nationalist Nick Fuentes has repeatedly live streamed from a pricey apartment building in suburban Chicago while telling viewers and supporters that he was still working from his old studio in his parents' basement 5 miles away, as he had for at least 4 years leading up to his move to a new base of operations. So not the first time that he's been deceptive with his financial standing. But essentially, he was pretending to be like this basement dwelling NEET. I mean, he is in aura, in essence, a basement dwelling NEET, but he's now, I guess, an apartment dwelling NEET, a pricey apartment building dwelling NEET. Let's see. Hate Watch uncovered Fuentes' deception by examining police records and archives of Fuentes' live streams, conducting interviews and making observations in Fuentes' new neighborhood of Berwyn, in the inner western part of Chicago's suburbs. The discovery raises new questions as to why Fuentes disguised his location from his viewers and long-standing questions about how much material support and assistance Fuentes has received from his parents in building a lucrative white nationalist propaganda machine. So this right here, they're setting the stage for what like the thesis statement is going to be, that his parents are, culpable and like they're in on it and they gave him financial backing. I mean, to me, it's sort of like, I don't know, it's really not the bombshell that they want it to be. But like I said, there are a couple of interesting details. Fuentes' long-term use of his parents' home as a production space had become a part of his persona as a white nationalist, America First propagandist, and his leadership of the so-called Groyper movement. Fuentes has performed the role of a stereotypical basement-dwelling NEET. Far from being a basement dweller, however, Fuentes appears to be an affluent homeowner, real estate investor, and sometimes landlord. Hate Watch learned about Fuentes' new production location from police records of swatting incidents that happened during his live internet broadcasts. The first known swatting targeting Fuentes occurred on March 30th and was partly captured on Fuentes' live stream. Around an hour into that night's show, Fuentes stopped his live stream to answer a knock on the door. About 10 minutes later, he restarted the live stream, telling viewers, "Yeah, I just got swatted for the first time." Fuentes misrepresented the incident as having occurred at his parents' home in LaGrange Park, another Chicago suburb 5 miles away, telling viewers, "My mom came down. She was freaking out about it." So, the thing here is obviously Nick was lying, but at the same time, as much as I hate the guy, I don't totally fault him for that because, if people are trying to swatch you, then I think it's probably in your best interests to, not disclose your true location because you're trying to chase the scent. You're trying to disarm the enemy. You're trying to confuse the swatters. So to me, that's not really like as controversial as they're making it out to be, unless the reason why he was obfuscating or deceiving is because he was trying to conceal the fact from his audience that he actually lives in this pricey apartment building, as they're putting it. So he's trying to once again conceal his true wealth because he's trying to maybe frame himself as a man of the people, I guess. So there's several possibilities there. Maybe both are true simultaneously. I don't know, but Fuentes continued to embellish his account, adding that, quote, "I heard Jaden also got swatted at the same time. I don't know if you heard it, but my mom was knocking on the door of my office. I think it happened at Jaden's first, and then it happened over here." So, he came up with the story on stream to make it seem like, oh, we both got swatted at two different locations at the same time, when it turns out it actually it actually seems to have occurred at the same location, which is, I don't know, whatever. According to Berwyn Police Department records, however, it was in Berwyn that dispatchers received a 10:08 p.m. call from a person who claimed to be Fuentes, told him that he shot his girlfriend, so that was the fake call there. Berwyn police and fire were on the scene within 5 minutes, talked to neighbors, and tried to make contact with residents of the Fuentes-owned building. Police first made contact with the basement tenant, who identified himself as Jaden, according to the report. Jaden told officers that the pair had been, quote, looking for a new place to live because someone recently posted their address online, according to the report. Hate Watch found no evidence that Fuentes had moved residence or acquired another property since the swatting. Okay. Subsequently, during the March 30th call out, officers spoke with the upstairs tenant, identified as Nick Fuentes, who related the same accounts as Jaden McNeil. All right, moving along. Supplementary reports added to the file on the incident show the investigation expanding over subsequent weeks. Berwyn officers discovered that simultaneous swatting calls had been, quote, conducted throughout multiple jurisdictions around the country and that, quote, all of the victims were in the same group as Nicholas Fuentes. All right. So the local officers had determined that there was a string of swattings that took place around the country that all involved members of America First, in particular AF generals. Now, this next line here is possibly of note, possibly of interest. The last supplementary report filed on June 6th noted that, quote, the FBI has taken over the case. Okay, now, what does that mean? I don't know exactly, but on June 6th, the FBI got involved. They took over the case. I don't know what to make of that. Maybe somebody watching the stream knows better than I do. But the feds, for some reason, got involved in this. So, all I could do is speculate as to why, but I did think that was definitely of note, to put it lightly. So, there you have it. There you have it. The Berwyn report offered a short description of one such simultaneous incident, noting that Nick stated that the same night these individuals attempted to swat his residence at Berwyn. They also attempted to swat his parents. So his parents also, I guess, got swatted at the same time. Then they go on to, let's see. So the Lagrange Park police officers quickly responded and spoke to person at the address whose name is redacted in the report. Officers' use of she, her pronouns in the report, however, indicate that they spoke to a woman. Now, I find that interesting because how do they know, based on her pronouns, what her sex was? I'm finding that to be rather bigoted language that they are assuming her sex based on the pronouns. So I'm surprised. I'm surprised SPLC would make a gaffe like this. Personally, I find that to be despicable and outrageous. Yo, VG with a $12 super chat. No message, just drop in a super chat. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate that. Azimuth says, doesn't this FBI business line up with Nick getting his money back? Well, it could. I mean, we'd have to look at the timeline. June 6th. Where does June 6th line up in the overall timeline? That's something that we would have to piece together. So just putting it out there, it's certainly a detail that warrants further investigation. Okay, now information from commercial data brokers corroborates Fuentes' own claims on various live streams that the only female resident at that address is his mother and the other resident is his father. 2 days later, on April 1st, the Berwyn residence was swatted a second time. All right, so this is kind of just more of the same. It got swatted a second time. Until now, little was known about Fuentes' activities in suburban Berwyn, other than that he had purchased a 3-unit apartment complex in the close-in majority Hispanic neighborhood in November 2020. And yeah, so the neighborhood is apparently 62.5% Hispanic, which I think is an interesting choice for somebody, well, he is the Mexican child leader after all, so I guess he wanted to live somewhere where he felt, acclimated to the environment. Wanted to feel like he was in tune with the locals, so I guess that does make sense. And this does also align with what Jaden has said himself about the area being very deeply brown. Yeti or not says, hit piece, but zero mention of J6. Nick's a Fed. Yeah, I mean, these hit pieces from the SPLC, they're always very underwhelming, I do have to say. At least the ones that have been done on Nick. There have been hit pieces done on other prior members of America First that were far more detailed, which is suspect in itself. Makes you wonder if maybe if Nick Fuentes himself was personally involved in that. Probably was. We know that he's willing to go to any length to throw his former allies to the wolves. So we all remember what he told Joseph Brody. He said to Joseph Brody to rot in prison and burn in hell. J6 defendant, by the way. Francisco says it seems pretty factual, to be honest. Well, I mean, it is factual, but the facts are mostly, I would say, inconsequential. So what is the dirt here? The dirt here is that he, may have been, I don't know. To me, it's like of all the things to talk about, of all the reasons to complain about Nick Fuentes, the fact that he chose not to disclose his current location to his audience, that seems to be very, very low on the priority list. I think most people probably don't want their audience to know where their current location is. I think that's pretty standard, especially when you're someone who's political and and there's a huge number of people that hate you. Now, I would say that probably the only other detail worth mentioning is that he was apparently using a shell company to conceal his ownership of this property. So it says here that the research collective Chicago Anti-Fascist Action initially discovered that Fuentes sold the apartment building, to Chico Properties LLC in the days after January 6th, 2021. Illinois Company Records lists Fuentes' grandmother, whose surname is apparently Chico, as the CEO and president of Chico Properties. The same records list Fuentes as the LLC's manager. The next paragraph reads, extremists often use LLCs to hide their assets from activists, political adversaries, and law enforcement. Chico Properties was involuntarily dissolved in April, but is still listed in property records as the owner of the property that police described as Fuentes' residence. So, yes, Chico. That's a very white-sounding name. White American sounding. Hate Watch spoke to several of Nick's neighbors whose names are being withheld over concerns they may be harassed. On the topic of Fuentes, most of the neighbors Hate Watch spoke with says the live streamer appears meek in real life, keeping to himself, apparently entertaining few visitors, and does not call attention to himself. Several said that when he is at home in Berwyn, his movements appear to be limited to passing from his garage to the back door of the apartment. So there you go. There's the future savior of America quietly crawling from his apartment to the garage. There you go. That is the man that is going to save us from certain doom and tragedy and all the rest of it.